Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Murder Corner, where I sit in my little closet and I plot the destruction of the moon. Today, we'll be looking at this piece called Punk Kitty. It's owned by Thrill Kicker. It's a little bit older, but I'm really happy with how it came out. And shout out to Thrill Kicker for being an amazing person and being super supportive. Anyway, today I kind of wanted to go over some of my origins, like where I came from, because I realize it's not information that's super readily available. Some of you may know my real name is Anthony, but I go by George. And it's like a really weird nickname, but my great grandmother raised me, and she took me in when I was very young. I was still a baby, and she raised me for the first part of my life. Eventually, I moved back in with my mom, but we'll get to that probably in this video. Um, yeah, she just kind of decided that I didn't look like an Anthony, that I look like a George, and my whole family just kind of adopted the nickname, and now everyone I know calls me George, and it's generally how I introduce myself. Yeah, I grew up in a very small town, like very small. It was a population of 400, I think, or something like that. It's in Texas. It's a little town called Roxton, and it was a very conservative town. It was actually it was a really weird place to grow up because it was still segregated, which is crazy to say and crazy to think about. Like I didn't think about it at the time, but when I got older, I kind of realized like all of the white families and all of the black families were in separate areas, and there was just like this clear divide of where they lived. So it's so wild to think about that and to look back on that. And yeah, I was a pretty weird, pretty effeminate kid. Uh, so obviously, I didn't get along with a lot of people. I got picked on. I got bullied like a lot. And I kind of, as I got older, like my voice deepened, and I actually started smoking when I was very young. I quit a while back, but it like gave me a really raspy voice. So nowadays, I don't think most people would think of me as effeminate at all. But back then, I was like very flamboyant and just the gayest little kid ever. So obviously, in this tiny conservative town, I wasn't like super liked there. I got picked on a lot. Um, and yeah, I lived with my grandparents until I was 12. Uh, my great grandfather, I was probably in first grade, I think. I remember I was over at my best friend's house, and suddenly they got a call, and his parents just told me, "You have to go home." And I was like, "Well, what happened?" And they didn't really want to talk about it. They didn't like want to let me know what was going on, but it was clear like something serious was happening. So they took me home, and there was an ambulance outside of the house, and my great grandfather had passed away. Um, I don't remember how old he was. He was in his 70s or 80s. I know he was older than my grandmother, but yeah. So that was like my first experience with death, or at least death of a human. We had a lot of pets, so like I had unfortunately seen like cats and dogs die a lot. Um, but yeah, it was pretty traumatic because like I wasn't super close with him, but he was like kind of my father figure. Um, anyway, my grandma kind of realized I needed like a male figure in my life, especially because she realized I was this weird little gay kid. So we had a preacher who lived across from us, and I kind of talked about this on Twitter, but he was very religious, but she kind of convinced him to let me hang out with his family and try to like teach me his values or whatever, just to like give me a male influence in my life. And at some point, I was young, but I still kind of knew that I wasn't attracted to women at all. And I remember him talking about like the love between a man and a woman and how it was sacred. And he said that if two men tried to love each other the same way a man and a woman loved each other, that it was an abomination. And that like stuck with me forever. Like I tried so hard not to be gay because of that, because like I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I would go to hell for it. So it really screwed me up. But anyway, a little later down the line, I I was also raised with my sister. And like I'm missing out on a whole backstory, like a whole section of it. Like my I have a step brother or a half brother rather, and for a while he lived next door with my mom, but then my mom couldn't take care of him anymore, so he moved in with my grandmother, not my great grandmother that I lived with, but my grandmother, her daughter. And my mom went to go do her own thing. Also, like, my mom struggled with addiction for most of her life, so that's really why we were raised away from her. Um, but yeah, I'm getting off topic. There's just like a whole bunch of weird little things that are being left out. But yeah, I was raised with my sister. It was me, her, my great grandma, and my great grandfather. And my sister moved in with my mom a little bit before I did. Um, she didn't get along with my grandmother the way I did. So she ended up moving in with my mom, and that just left me and my great grandma. And I think I was like around 10 or 11 when that happened. Where I was still, you know, young. I lived with my grandma a couple of years by myself. And unfortunately, she had cancer. We didn't know about it, but like she was going downhill for a while. And like looking back, it's kind of obvious, but like at the time, I didn't even think about it, like how hard things must have been for her. Uh, but yeah, eventually it it took her, and I would go to stay with my mom during the summers. We would go and visit with her usually. So one summer, like my grandma kind of made a point to tell me to like make sure I pack enough, which was kind of weird, but I didn't really think too much of it. Uh, but yeah, my mom came and picked me up, and she told me in the car on my way out that Granny had cancer and that I wasn't going back home, that I had to go live with her now, which was like devastating at the time. But it was correct because my grandma did not have much time left. I don't think I lived with my mom for a full year for one day. And it was right after my birthday. I remember because my mom couldn't afford to get me a birthday present. She had to wait until she got paid. And so it was like directly after my birthday. And I was just laying there in the morning and I heard the phone ring and I knew what it was. Like, I don't know why, but like as soon as I heard the phone ring, I just knew like that was my grandma calling to say that my great grandma had died. And it was. And that was devastating for me because she was my mom. Like, I lived with her my whole childhood and she was just gone. Like, it it was really hard to deal with it. And like plus I had to move to this new place. I didn't know anybody. uh Albuquerque's not a big town, which is where I moved to, but like it's way bigger than Roxton. It was like massive in comparison. So I just felt like completely lost, and like I had just lost this huge part of me. And yeah, it was really rough. But so that's kind of the first half of my life. This video is coming close to an end, so I'm gonna have to make a part two about like my teenage years, because this was like from birth to 12 years old, and there's a bunch of stuff missing, but like this is kind of the main gist of it. So yeah, I guess next time I'll talk about like what it was like with my mom and my stepdad, because that's a whole separate story. I would actually say that like the first years of my life were the best part. Uh, my teenage years were pretty rough, but like I don't know. I don't like to dwell too hard on it because things could have been way worse. I've Sometimes I think like I had it bad, and then I listen to other people, and I'm like, no, I had it rough, but like it could have been way worse. So yeah, that's just a little bit of backstory. I just thought I'd like kind of go over a little bit of who I am and where I came from. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys right now. Um, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please like and subscribe. If you did, it really helps. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.